Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jim Krempel, and as mentioned, I'm Community Outreach and Volunteer Coordinator for Anne Arundel County. I'll talk to you today about some winter preparedness tips as we age, and I like to count myself in that group. I'm 67 years old and pretty proud of that. Next slide. So the first thing we'll do is get some weather terminology out of the way. If you watch WJZ and some of the other news broadcasts, you'll hear the weather given for each day. The first thing is outlook, which looks across the week. So for this week, for example, we're actually having unseasonably warm weather. It's kind of like spring now, but come Wednesday and Thursday, we'll have very heavy rain leading into a cold front. We'll be back to fall weather. So weather this time of year is very changeable. So we ask you during this long week to be prepared for anything, and we'll tell you how to get prepared in just a second. An advisory is a hazard that could cause an inconvenience. It's not necessarily life-threatening, but if you take a commute from, say, Anne Arundel County into Baltimore or Howard County, you know that even an inch of snow on the ground can be dangerous, so plan very carefully. A watch means severe weather is possible. So you want to stay tuned to your weather information source, and we'll talk about that too for a later forecast to keep up to date. So be ready. And finally, a warning is when severe weather is likely, has already been spotted to be occurring, and it could possibly be life-threatening. That means take action, and we'll work through all of these. So winter can provide a whole host of things that we have to worry about. Of course, extreme cold is the first one we think about. The record cold for the state of Maryland, believe it or not, is 40 below zero. That's Alaska kind of temperatures. That was out in Garrett County in the 1800s. Baltimore City's cold record is 9 below zero. It's happened actually several times. Blowing snow is something we always worry about. It has visibility hazard, but it also builds up into snow mounds, which can either block us in or create mobility problems. I think the worst thing we face in Maryland is an ice storm. Ice storms provide very treacherous conditions, whether it's on your walkway or on streets, and it also makes the trees and wires heavy with ice and causes power failures. Of course, we face heavy snow. If you're around in 2011, we had the back-to-back 18-inch snows, and we do get freezing rain where it goes between rain and actual ice. And then the snow can melt and build up and cause what's called an ice jam, and an ice jam would then block any water that would come behind it. So you have both flooding and snow at the same time. So as older people, we have to worry about a number of things. We worry about exposure. That is being outdoors and getting yourself exposed to the point it becomes dangerous. We worry about winter illness. We're talking about just the general illness you might have. We might talk about some of the chronic illness you might have, the flu, or of course, COVID, which we'll discuss in a second. One of the things everyone should worry about is falls. Things look more sturdy than they are. They could be treacherous, easy to fall and break something. And of course, hazardous activities, we ask everyone, especially older people, to be very careful in what they do during the winter. We'll talk about these. So first thing we ask you to do is help slow the spread of COVID. As you know, the pandemic is in the increase phase right now, but doing your part's very easy. The first thing and the easiest thing is to wear a mask. There's nothing political about wearing a mask. If you wear a mask and I wear a mask, the chances of us exchanging those germs is 70% less than without a mask. So it's just common sense. Then use social distancing, stay 6 feet apart. Paula talked about how the Registrar of Wills is doing some very good implementation of these, including that distancing. Wash your hands. Wash your hands with soap and water thoroughly. And while you're doing it, do it for 20 seconds. An easy way to remember that is to sing the happy birthday song to yourself, hopefully, twice, and that'll give you 20 seconds. And then if you think you've been exposed or you don't feel well, go ahead and get tested. Testing is free in almost every county. I know in our county, we have several locations where you can do it for free. Most importantly for people our age is to get a seasonal flu shot. So one pandemic is more than enough. We don't want a flu pandemic and a COVID pandemic. The flu shots are again, readily available and easy to administer. We talk about exposure. One of the things we worry about is hypothermia. That's when your body temperature gets 95 degrees or below. 98.6 or so is about normal for most people. As you start moving south of 95 degrees, then your system starts shutting down. And the warning signs are confusion, shivering, difficulty speaking, sleepiness, especially if it's not in a situation where somebody would likely be sleepy, and then really stiff muscles. Now, some of us who are older might experience some of these at one time or another. But if all these comes together, it's an indication of two things that could be very dangerous. One is hypothermia, where your body temperature is going low, and the other could be signs of a stroke. So in either case, if in doubt, call 911. Let the experts sort it out. So talk about a little bit about emergency preparedness during winter, especially for those of us that are older. Simply making a plan, building a kit, and staying informed. So we know, we plan, and we act. So the first thing we ask you to do is build a support network if you don't have one. So that means at least 2 people you trust. Could be family members, could be trusted neighbors or friends, or it could be professional caregivers if you need one or have one. Make sure those trusted support providers have an extra key to your home. If you trust them enough with your life, you trust them with the key to your home. Let them know where you keep your medicine and any emergency supplies, how to use life-saving equipment or administer medicines that you might need. And especially they should know how to contact 911 and or your doctor. So we say never shelter in place alone. If we do get a snowstorm, a winter storm, or ice storm, then we say if you cannot shelter with somebody you can trust, then go ahead and move to a place you can. 2 heads are better than 1. Sheltering in place with 2 gives you double chance of protection. So plan for cold weather, common sense. So check on the weather in advance of going outside and plan ahead about what you're going to do. If you're already in a warm residence, go ahead and shelter there. Outlast the snowstorm or ice storm in that residence. If you don't think you have the power stability or you don't have the heat, then go ahead and move to a warmer residence with a family member or a friend, or you can reach out to the county government if you need more help. Bundle up, mask up, and limit exposure. Stay on cleared paths. It's bad enough that there's icy sidewalks and icy streets, but once a path has been cleared, then it's best to stay on that for lessening chances of fall. And for that matter, travel together. Again, 2 is always better than 1 in any preparedness situation. Let others know where you are and where you're going so that they have an idea where you'll be in case something happens and you don't check in. And by all means, ask for help with winter tasks. So if you're snow shoveling and you're over 65, particularly if you have a chronic condition, don't do it. Ask a teenager for help. Ask a neighbor for help. Eat healthy and stay hydrated and know your health at all times, no matter what's going on, but especially in an emergency. Knowing your health means talking to your doctor and then knowing what your body tells you, what is right and what is wrong. And going along with that is knowing what your limits are. If you don't normally snow shovel, you don't want to start during winter. Cold weather and old age is not a good thing to go together. And then please keep a safe eye on your neighbors, no matter what age they are or condition they are. But if you do it safely. Wear a mask and keep that 6-foot distancing. If you have special medical needs, especially if you have chronic illness or a disability, you have to plan carefully and early. So go ahead and work with your support network to keep an updated list of all your prescriptive medications, their dosages, and any known allergies you might have. If you can, keep a 1-month supply of prescription medication on hand. That way, even if we go into a COVID lockdown, you'll still be protected, not to mention a snow or ice storm. Have the phone numbers for your doctors and pharmacists and share that with your trusted support network. Have spare medical devices, such as extra cane or a walker, hearing aids, and extra batteries available. Before a storm is not the time to start looking for this. If you have a medical alert bracelet, make sure you're wearing that if you need it and need to evacuate. And if you use an emergency response call system, such as a button call, make sure that works, test it before the storm, and have extra batteries for that if needed. Remember that home healthcare services, if you have someone to come in to give you physical therapy or medical care, may be interrupted in a storm. So check ahead with your healthcare provider to make sure they'll still do that. And if you have special transportation needs, especially if a caregiver or family member needs to drive you, make sure you've arranged that in advance. All common sense, but it needs to be done in advance of a storm. If you have life-sustaining medical equipment, like home oxygen, plan for it before the storm. So make sure you have spare bottles, cannulas, or masks if they're available. If not, talk to your supplier. They may be able to supply you in advance or even possibly during the storm, but don't wait for that. Plan ahead. You can also use an oxygen concentrator with your doctor's permission with extra batteries. If you have essential medical equipment like an LVAD or a CPAP device, contact your supply company to talk about backup power for that. Learn how to connect and start backup power supplies, and to teach your family, caregivers, and trusted neighbors how to use that backup power. So again, you have yourself an alternate and an alternate to the alternate. If you don't have a generator and the power goes out for a long time, plan to relocate to a place with reliable power. Again, it could be a family member, a friend, or you can contact the county. The BGE has a special needs program. I show the numbers here. and you can get copies of that later, to include those for experiencing deafness. And then they have a special needs hotline during emergency events that they can concentrate on getting your power back on sooner if you have a medical need. So good things to remember. Next slide. If you have an urgent medical appointment, like a dialysis appointment, go ahead and find out from your clinic in advance if they're going to be operational during the storm. How does your plan fit with their plan? So if they're not operational, they might give you alternatives that might allow you to skip an appointment, or they may give you another location to go to. If it's open, you still have the appointment, then determine how you're going to get to and from that clinic. Can you drive yourself, or do you need a family member or caregiver to take you? If you still need additional assistance, you can call the County or City Department of Aging and Disabilities or the Office of Emergency Management. Have a family communications plan. So that's simply a written communications plan where you and your support network know who's going to contact one another. That can include family, trusted friends, trusted neighbors, and all of that, but also add work and school contacts and include your grandkids and great-grandkids and other important numbers you might have. Have an out of area or even out of state switchboard operator. So this is a person that's going to get calls from your whole family to let everyone else know that you're in good condition. It could be a relative or a trusted friend. And it's shown on the slide here what you need to send, and text is more reliable if the phones go down, who you are, where you are, and what your status is. So as you see here, Aunt Mabel's at her cousin's in Towson, and she's safe and comfortable, so the family doesn't have to worry about her. By the way, if you don't text, just find a teenager. They'll help you happily. This is a household emergency kit. So we say be self-sufficient for at least 5 days. That's the longest period it's going to take for us to get through the snow and ice to get to you. These are mostly common sense items. And most of you, as you look through this list, have these things at home. What you don't do is plan to have them together in advance of a storm. You don't want to say, I'm missing something 2 days before a major snowstorm and go to Giant and find the shelves absolutely bare. So we look at those things that are common sense that you might need. And we've added some things that are shown in green that are good for the COVID. So you see, we're now talking about 5 days supply, including face coverings. So that's 2 surgical or cloth masks and surgical gloves. Have soap and hand sanitizer, and of course, extra toilet paper aboard. We always talk about toilet paper being needed for the winter. Well, it's doubly important right now. Next slide. So to be prepared, you've got to stay informed. So we ask you to go ahead and stay informed of your favorite radio or TV station. All of the stations in this area, plus the online stations in Sirius XM, are all part of the emergency alert system. That's the irritating 3 buzzes that you hear on the TV or radio, followed by a tone. The trick is, if you hear the tone, the high-pitched tone, listen carefully. That's going to be a real emergency. You'll be getting instructions. So all those systems will send that to you. Next slide. Now, all of the counties have mass notification systems of one or another. Maryland Prepares is a statewide system managed by the Maryland Emergency Management Agency. You can download that from the App Store or from Google Play, and that'll give you preparation instructions, everything I'm talking about, plus give you alerts of things coming, especially weathers. And then it has an I'm safe button for those who are also registered to tell them you're safe, much like that switchboard we talked about. You'll see we don't use sirens in most part of Maryland anymore. Some of the rural areas might, but in most of the cities and urban areas, suburban areas, you can't hear them anymore. Most people are indoors or in their cars, and it doesn't give further information. So we use mass notification systems. Very easy to do. Next slide. There are a number of preparedness resources you can do. So the first thing is go to your county or your city Office of Emergency Management. All 23 counties and the 3 cities, municipalities of Maryland have that. Can you name the 3 municipalities? Well, the first one's obviously Baltimore. The second one is Annapolis. No one gets the third one unless you live there, and that's Ocean City. Now, there are another number of other small towns that have emergency managers, but they're not necessarily independent jurisdictions. You can also contact your Department of Aging and Disabilities, both at the state and county and city level. They're also a wealth of information, particularly for older people. American Red Cross has a preparedness brochure online, and they'll also mail it to you, called Disaster Preparedness for Seniors and by Seniors. Not only is it extremely complete to include winter preparedness, but it's written from the perspective of those of us who are older, so it's really meaningful to you. The National Institutes of Health has a health-oriented winter weather safety that folds into COVID safety at the same time. It's a really good resource for you. And of course, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, has a ReadyGov location for seniors specifically. So the question is, are you ready? So as you see in this slide, grandpa and grandson are together and they're both ready. But what's grandpa doing wrong? He doesn't have his mask up over his nose. Remember, mask covers your chin and your nose. And thank you for your time. If you have any questions, please ask at the end of the broadcast today or reach out to your local emergency management agency. Thank you.